Rome was born as a city, but it did not remain just a city, because Rome's true power was not in the walls it built, but in the order it created. Many societies grow through war, but very few survive through their system. Rome created exactly this difference, and that difference began with a decision made at the very beginning. Rome's first kings did not only rule, they built, not a city, but a mechanism. When Romulus died, the story did not end, because Rome was never dependent on a single individual. A new king came, then another, then another. A total of 7 kings. What truly mattered was not who they were, but what they did. These kings did not only expand Rome, they organized it. The first borders were drawn. The first military structure was established. The first social classes were defined. Rome was no longer just a settlement. It was beginning to become a system. The first major step was this: society was divided, but not to weaken it, to control it. Patricians, plebeians, in other words, elites and common people. This division would become the foundation of Rome's internal conflicts, but also of its power, because Rome understood this very clearly. Absolute equality is uncontrollable, but structured inequality is manageable. Then came the army. Rome's army was not established only to fight. It was established for discipline. The citizen became a soldier. This is a very critical detail, because in this system, the one who protects the state is also part of the state. In Rome, war was not an obligation but a duty, and duty creates identity. Over time, Rome achieved this. It evolved from being a fighting society into an organized war machine. Every soldier knows his place. Every unit moves in order. Every command is executed without question. This is not just a military structure. This is the mindset itself. Rome's second major move was this: religion. But in Rome, religion was more function than belief. The gods were not only entities to be worshipped, they were tools that legitimized order. Before every decision, a sign was sought. Before every war, a prophecy was made. What did this achieve? It prevented decisions from being questioned, because the decision was no longer yours. It was the decision of the gods. Thus, Rome combined 2 things: power and legitimacy. This combination made Rome extremely dangerous. As the city grew, so did its problems. More people meant more conflict. But at this point, Rome did something. It did not suppress problems. It integrated them into the system. The plebeians demanded rights, they rebelled. In another society, this would be a crisis. In Rome, it became change. New institutions were established, new representation mechanisms were created. But note this: this was not a democracy. It was a balanced system. Rome never fully shared power, but it never kept it entirely in one hand either. It did something. It appeared to distribute power, while concentrating control at the center. The Senate emerged. This is one of Rome's most critical structures, because the Senate is the memory of the state, is the mind of the state. Kings go, but the Senate remains. Here, a very important turning point occurs. Rome is no longer dependent on individuals. Rome is now dependent on a structure. But this structure is not flawless, because Rome's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. Power tends to concentrate at the center. This exists within the structure of the system. Kings used this power, but over time, this was no longer enough, because Rome was growing. And in every growing system, balance of power becomes harder. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, that is, Tarquin the Proud. His rule pushed Rome to its limits. The issue was no longer who rules. The real question became, how do they rule? Because when power is concentrated in one hand, control is lost. And Rome's greatest fear is this: uncontrolled power. In the end, Rome made a decision. It abolished the monarchy. This is a very critical event because for the first time, Rome changed the system it had created. The Republic was born. But this was not a revolution. It was an evolution. Rome did not destroy the monarchy. It transformed it. Because Rome's goal was never this, to destroy, but to adapt. The republican system was built upon Rome's previous experiences: two consuls, the Senate, popular assemblies. Power appeared to be divided, but in reality, control was still within the system. Thus, Rome achieved this, turning chaos into order. But it did so not through freedom, but through control. That is why Rome's system is unique, because this system is neither fully democratic nor fully autocratic. This system is flexible, and flexibility brings longevity. As Rome grew, this system was tested. Conflicts arose internally, wars occurred externally, but the system endured because Rome understood this. The power of a state comes not from its decisions, but from its rules. And Rome's rules were clear. Power is not shared, but it is controlled. This system kept Rome standing for centuries, but the same system would later challenge it, because every system has a limit. And Rome's system was accumulating its internal tensions. But this was not yet visible. For now, Rome was rising, because Rome was no longer just a city. It was a model, a system, a machine of power. And this machine was designed not to stop, but to grow. But every growth has a cost. Rome had not yet paid that cost, but it would. Because Rome's story is not only about how it was founded, it is about how it transformed. And this transformation will lead to one of the greatest shifts in history. But that is the story of the next chapter.